Mayor Pro Tem Marshburn.
I'm present.
Councilmember Behringer.
Here.
Councilmember Kennedy.
Here.
Councilmember Singleton.
Here.
And Councilmember Vance.
Here.
Councilmember Kathy Behringer will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation. Mr. Rice.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You'll join me in prayer if you wish. Heavenly Father, we come humbly before you this evening, asking for wisdom and guidance and understanding as we make decisions for the town of Garner and its citizens. We remember our police and firefighters and first responders as they strive to work every day to protect and serve us. And we remember our armed forces and their families and the sacrifices they make for us daily. Lastly, we pray for wisdom for those in authority at the county, state, and national level, as well as for us this evening. Amen.
Amen. Okay, next is petition and comment. That's on the agenda. If you wish to address the council on this item, any other item must not be on the item tonight. If you wish to address the council, come forward. Okay, very good. Adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I approve adoption of the agenda as presented.
Second.
Made second to approve. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Presentations. Joseph Thomas.
Mayor and Town Council, it's a pleasure to come before you this evening and present to you the 2018-2019 Economic Development Annual Report. This past year was a banner year for economic development in Garner, as FY19 saw the continued increase in our population, which is now estimated to be over 32,000, and our tax base growing well into 4.5%. And all of this shouldn't be all too much surprise as we continue to see folks moving from outside the area to Wake County and into the town of Garner and driving up our home sales price, which is now well over $227,000. Our unemployment rate has remained steady. Even the past year had actually dropped down well below 4%, has ticked up a little bit here lately, but still at 4% as well, well under most standards. So we're very happy with what we've seen, and the community continues to remain strong and the economy continues to grow. This past year, we saw some of the largest investment that our town has seen in recent years with the location of Amazon and the 1,500 jobs that they will be creating, the $200 million that they have invested out there on Jones Sausage Road. And as a part of that project, the town has worked with DOT to leverage $4.5 million for road improvements that should begin fairly shortly. And you guys will be dealing with some of that later on the agenda. But other notable successes we've had this past year was AutoZone and their Mega Hub Center on 401. They will be creating 125 jobs there. And also Partworks, Martin Marietta, and Ferguson have all located in the town of Garner and North Greenfield Park, South, and North. Every year we track the number of businesses that we get requests for, and this past year we received 64. I've laid out in a table there where you can track the type of project we received, the investment, and the jobs that would be created if the project were to land in Garner. And you can also see that last year was by far the best year we had ever had. Some of the largest projects that came into the office with a total of $3.6 billion. But even though the number went down this past year to $2 billion, we still had a great year and got a great opportunity to put Garner in front of a lot of companies. Advanced manufacturing continues to be the largest industry looking in North Carolina and in our area for a potential location. And a lot of that is due to some of the reshoring that we're seeing from overseas. The trade disputes that are going on now, people believe that's kind of slowing things down a little bit, and maybe that's why we've seen the tick down in advanced manufacturing projects, but still they're very healthy and we're able to get in front of them and put our product in front of them to see if they will locate here. So all in all, we had a great year. The numbers are declining a little bit from last year, but still very healthy in the way of requests. Our business retention and expansion program continues to be a foundation of our department. We try to visit 20 companies every single year. This past year, we visited right at 20, and got a lot of great feedback from the companies. This is the one way that we keep a barometer on our local economy, because often the big data sources don't really focus on our town. So we get out there and pound the pavement, meeting with CEOs and managers and asking them how they're doing. 30% of them said they still had plans to expand. We saw a lot of expansions last year and the year before, and 85% of them stated that their sales were increasing. All good signs that the local economy is doing well. Most of them are adding jobs. We're still working with several of them to partner with our Capital Area Workforce Development Board, Wait Tech, and even in our high schools to help funnel talent to fill those openings. This past year, we also launched with the Communications Department's help, some economic development podcasts. So we did a podcast on workforce development issues, and we also did one on why Garner is a great place for entrepreneurship, both of which can be seen on YouTube and can also be downloaded and listened to wherever you get your podcasts at. The other thing we've been working with Rick and the Communications Department on is the WRAL media articles that you guys have seen come out, and really, really excited about those as they help to bring publicity to our town and highlight some of the great things that are going on here, many of which are not economic development related, but some of them are, and nonetheless the publicity has been really great to have in Garner. Our real estate market remains healthy with all of our sectors in the low single digits as far as vacancy. Lease rates continue to stay strong, and we're seeing new product put on the market and it being leased up very quickly. So the demand is still there. We're working diligently to continue to grow our product offerings, and we'll have to definitely recognize the board's support in extending the sewer line on Highway 70, which will allow us to build a new industrial park there, which if you drive down 70 headed towards Clayton, you'll see a lot of clearing and grading going on currently. So really excited about having that come online, and that 150,000 square foot facility should be out of the ground sometime in Q2, Q3 of 2020. But without y'all's support for that line, that project would have never occurred. So thank you very much, and we're eager to get that online so we continue to recruit and bring new companies to Garner. This past year also saw the transition of the Garner Economic Development Corporation from a single focus to more of a generalized economic development entity. And this is the same work plan that was presented to you all back in the winter, spring of 2019, and outlined some of the things that the board would like to accomplish throughout the next year or two. And so this work is going on currently. We will have some items to show you here in the next couple of months that are checking off some of these items, and we'll continue to add to and update this list as we move forward. As a part of the transition of the Economic Development Corporation, we saw some more senior board members leave and some new board members come on. And so we wanted to recognize our new executive board members, Ken Marshburn, or Councilman Marshburn, who is now our new chairman. Ronnie Thompson, Jeff Swain, Griffin Loffridge, and Doris Hubner are now serving as the executive board of the GEDC, and wanted to make sure to point out that Councilman Vance and Bruce Andrews have retired off the board, but definitely played a key role in helping us redevelop the Garner Technology site and get Amazon to our community. So they'll be greatly missed, and we're moving forward with the GDC and hoping to have a big impact moving forward. The last thing I'll say is this year was incredible. It was one of the highlights of my career, certainly. And I couldn't have done it without your support, and John Hodges and Chris Johnson, Jeff Triesenberg, Tony Beasley, the entire development services staff, Forrest, everybody, almost every department in this town has had some part in helping get the technology center site where it is today. And so they deserve much more credit than they'll probably ever be given, or certainly that than I do. But they were absolutely incredible partners, and fantastic to have them here. So in front of you, I should have started off with this, but in front of you is a printed copy of our annual report with the slideshow. So please look through that. And now Mari will present the downtown section.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you tonight. I'm just kind of wrapping up the Economic Development Annual Report by sharing some of the statistics from downtown Garner. As you know, we compile these as part of the Main Street program, so it's a great way for us to judge sort of both on an annual basis and cumulatively what kind of growth is happening in downtown. Just to highlight a couple of things. The public investment this year was $2.85 million, the majority of that coming from the new recreation center construction. That helped to leverage $915,000 of private investment for a total of $3.7 million. That's a really great number for us this year. And as you can see, since 2009, we've almost seen $23 million worth of investment thanks to the focus that the town has had on revitalizing downtown. We don't have a lot to show for businesses and jobs this year, it seems, but when you look at it, that is net new. We've had a couple of long-standing businesses in downtown leave due to retirement, and new ones come in through initiatives like the Gearworks space. We've seen one facade redone this year and 2 public improvement projects. And our major it's always very important for us to notice how many volunteer hours have been contributed by both the community members as well as the Downtown Garner Association Board of Directors. 580 hours were contributed this year by volunteering for committees, the board, and special events. And the value of that time is almost $15,000. That's a really amazing investment just by the citizens of Garner. We've had a lot of great, like Joe said, we've had a really great year, and we've had a lot of amazing things happen. One of the great things that has happened is that we were able to engage the Development Finance Initiative with your assistance and support to begin developing the pad next to the Recreation Center. That's a great highlight for me. During the time I've been here, we've been planning for that for the last 4+ years. So it's really great to see it starting to move and getting to share that story with the town. In cooperation with Joe Stallings, we were able to launch Gearworks in the town-owned space at 120 East Main Street. That was a really great project where we opened the bridging space that you recall. We've had our tenant, Operation 36, in place for a little over a year now, and they grew from 5 employees when they moved into the space to now, I believe they have about 12, and they're looking to add 2 more that they just told me about. They've been a really great addition to downtown, and they increase our creative technology cluster that we have sort of growing downtown. So we're very happy to have them. And in addition to that, they will begin their community service portion of their commitment to the town. Matt Regan, who is one of the owners of Operation 36, will be working with Joe Stallings and Garner Magnet High School and South Garner High School to do a business pitch competition. So they'll be working on entrepreneurship skills with the students in the high schools. We've really seen a tremendous growth in private interest in downtown development this year. We've seen a lot of property growth and movement. We'll have a new restaurant opening on Main Street, hopefully by the end of this year. And with your support, we're able to make some changes to town ordinance that allowed us to really improve our ability to attract development in downtown. Next year, we hope to see the redevelopment of the Alco property into a multi-use space that I really think will become a great engine for downtown. We're looking forward to that. And we've seen a lot of just private interest from, buying older homes to renovate, to moving into office space. And as always, we have a lot of interest just in people looking for space in downtown. And finally, we were pleased to add 4 new directors to the Downtown Garner Board of Directors. We've had a lot of transition this year, and we really appreciate Mary Elizabeth Twitty, who served as the president this year. We've added these folks, and they represent real estate, construction, banking, as members of the community. And finally, we are pleased to mention that we were a nationally accredited Main Street program in 2019 for the work that was done in 2018. So it's been a very busy year. You guys have been a really tremendous part of that, both in supporting the work that we're doing, helping us to improve the processes for development in downtown. We look forward to having you come and join us when the rec center opens, and we're just so pleased that so much of the development is happening in downtown.
Questions, comments?
Just a quick comment. Thank you, Maury. I know we are having food truck presentations, or I don't know if we call them rodeos. Just this past week we had one, but I'm pleased to see that. And do I understand that maybe Mr. Byrd, the Full Bloom place, he maybe is instrumental in having food trucks or a food truck come there with some degree of regularity, more so than just when we're promoting that, right?
Yes, so he has them most Fridays. He'll have 1 or 2 food trucks come out. So he's really testing that, the viability of having them come out at other times. As a result of that, we've certainly seen other businesses gain interest in having that to supplement sort of the lack of food options downtown. It's really great to see that Patrick Byrd is leading the charge on that as a food establishment owner, that he recognizes that it is not necessarily competition, but it is a complement to his business for people to be able to come downtown and get something to eat on a Friday night. And we hope that the Whitakers, when Shady's opens, that they'll feel the same way, and that we'll have more opportunities for food trucks and downtown dining as we continue to develop.
And just to give him a plug, did you say it's usually on Fridays?
Usually on Fridays, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Maury, when do you expect the first report from DFI being made to council?
I believe they are planning to come in January with their market report. That'll be they've done sort of their parcel analysis and presented that to staff. They'll be doing a little bit of work with the Downtown Garner Association to vet the guiding principles for the project. They've shared those with staff, and we've kind of confirmed what they've shared with us. And then the Downtown Garner Association will get to see that market report sometime in December, just to give any feedback, and then it will officially come to you guys in January.
Is that like a market analysis?
Yes.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Could we bring Mr. Stallings back up? I wanted to come and ask a question. I'm sure I won't say the name of this correctly, but Mr. Rohde's operation, is it Good Nature Foods or not?
Improved Nature.
Excuse me.
Improved Nature.
Yeah, I think I saw an article recently where he's been able to, I think, step it up another notch. Can you comment on that and inform the council?
Yeah, absolutely. Improved Nature came to our community in September of 2017, and at that time they had roughly 5 to 8 jobs, and they've been able to land some contracts, and they're starting to ship their product overseas and have done really well. And so the article, I believe you're mentioning, Councilman, they were talking about their need for expansion and some of their long-term plans. And certainly we are proud to have been a part of the early stages and helping to see that company grow right here in our own community, and it is our intent to ensure as they do grow, they grow right here in our community. Sure. And so it was a great article, great publicity for a local company, absolutely.
And if I may, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say a word of commendation to this young man standing in front of us, Joe Stallings, from the standpoint of the GEDC. I'm sure I speak for the other members, say that Joe has provided excellent leadership in all facets of the work that's been done in the past and as we go forward. But Amazon might would have happened without him, but I doubt it. And so he was quite instrumental in leading the charge, along with others. But the GEDC really appreciates the leadership and the ongoing efforts you provide there. So thank you very much.
Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Move forward, public hearing. There is no public hearing. New and old.
Consent agenda. Consent agenda.
Please.
Yeah, let's
Mayor, I
talk.
move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion made, second, all in favor, vote by saying aye.
All right.
All opposed. Now, no public hearings. New and old business. Mr.
Mr.
Attorney.
Mayor, the item number one deals with Jones Sausage Road. If the council will recall, part of the proposed improvements on Jones Sausage Road to be undertaken pursuant to the local funding agreement with DOT and the development agreement with Hillwood include a right turn lane from Jones Sausage Road onto Garner Road. That will require some fairly small temporary construction and slope easements from both properties and a drainage easement from both properties and a slope easement from the property to the northeast quadrant. And we need to have the town approve a resolution to initiate an acquisition process for trying to get those easements.
You need a motion?
Motion in the motion in the agenda package.
To approve the resolution.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve the resolution as presented by the attorney in regards to the right-of-way acquisition.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let me see, the next one on page 41 is in connection with some items that have arisen sort of at the last minute from the engineers on a couple of properties on New Rand Road. The two properties that are referenced here are the first two properties north of 70 on the northwest quadrant, and we need to acquire some permanent utility easements in connection with the relocation of that power pole that's on that first property. And basically, I have handed out a proposed revised resolution to you, and I'll explain what the difference is. In coming up with the numbers that we used in this first one, we were probably a little bit too technical and a little bit too creative in trying to put forward a claim for a credit against what we've already paid for temporary construction easements on these. And after reviewing it and looking at it and thinking about not having to try to explain that to the property owners, we want to just go ahead and compensate the property owners for the public utility permanent easement, just as though the temporary construction easement had not been granted. And basically, we're talking about a couple $100 difference total, but I think this will make dealing with the property owners a lot clearer. And so I suggest that we ask the council to approve this resolution, but substituting for the numbers that are in the agenda, substitute the additional compensation on the Ruffin property is $122, and the additional compensation on the Spells property is $1,089.99.
The $1,089.99 is the total amount?
Yes.
Not the
One
additional?
1089.99, yes, sir.
For that property, and the other is 122.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, I move we approve Resolution 2019-2395 to acquire easements needed for the construction of improvements on New Rand Road.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Will that allow the project to get under construction then?
As possible. Chris has been working with scheduling, and we will be in a position to acquire both of these one way or the other in about 5 weeks from now, and I think he says that will allow it to work.
Get out. We've done 1 and 2, is that right?
Yes, sir. On number 3.
Number 3. Fund balance update.
All right, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Tonight, I'm going to give you an update on fund balance and the budget. We'll start with just some background information on fund balance, just to give you guys some reminders, provide an update on fund balance levels, and then I'm happy to answer any questions. So what is fund balance? We have a couple more formal definitions, but ultimately I think about it sort of like the town's piggy bank. It's the funding that we have to cover one-time requirements, things that pop up that we need to make investments with. So it's that extra funding that you have in your bank account to make sure that you can make the investments that you need and that you're protected in case something happens and you need some additional resources. You can have fund balance and any funds. It can be restricted, assigned, or unassigned. Basically what that means is it can be restricted or assigned would be council or the state or the federal government or anybody that was controlling the money saying that this has to be dedicated to a specific purpose. So for example, fee in lieu of parkland has to be dedicated to developments of parks, where unassigned can really be spent on anything you want to spend it on. So it's available for council to utilize as they see fit. Today, we are going to talk about unassigned fund balance in the general fund, or at least focus on that. All right, so why do we have fund balance? I already mentioned a couple reasons on a more practical level, but it's also required by state law. It helps in emergencies. So think about some of the counties or towns in eastern North Carolina that have been impacted by some of the hurricanes that have been required to put out a significant amount of funding. They long-term will be reimbursed by FEMA, but until they have that money back, they have to have the money in their accounts to cover all the different things that are going on as the disaster is occurring. It's a buffer from economic changes. So this would be primarily a recession. So if things are rolling along and you're feeling good about your budget, you adopt it, and then things slow down dramatically, it's possible that you might have to dip into fund balance to cover the requirements because you were projecting 800 building permits and it ends up being 200, and that's going to have a significant impact. And also the rating agencies expect it, and this has been something the town's done really well at, and the rating agencies have reflected it with their comments on the town's financial position. So in terms of fund balance requirements, the local government commission has 8%. The town's policy is 30% minimum. And currently the town's fund balance is or unassigned fund balance, I should clarify, is 16.5 million or 47% of the general fund expenditures. Just to put that into context and give the number that everybody wants, we have about 5.9 million above the threshold. So with that 47% in that 16.5, there is a 5.9 that's above the 30% threshold. So how do you add the fund balance? So this is similar to your bank account. If you as a family bring in more money than you spend, you're going to have more money at the end of that year than you had originally. So it's not that much different from the town. If we bring in more than we spent, then we will have more. So there's a couple different ways to practically go about doing this. You can forecast revenues in a conservative manner. So I might think that sales tax is going to be 3 or 4% growth, but I forecasted a little bit lower than that, knowing that more will come in. That's likely going to lead to additional funds and fund balance. You can receive an unexpected windfall, so a large gift donation, something just happening unexpected that provides you a significant amount of funding. You can also spend less than you budgeted. So this would likely happen in a scenario where staff leaves. As you're backfilling that position, there's going to be some position turnover that's going to generate savings. It can also happen on the operating or the capital side. So on the operating side, it can be anything from paper to travel to anything that you're really going to be doing that could potentially allow you to spend less. And all these extra funds, no matter how you accumulate them, then go into fund balance and go into the pot of money that the town can utilize for all these unanticipated events or one-time requirements. So how do you use fund balance? Again, similar to your household, if you spend more than you bring in, you're going to have less at the ends. So there's a couple different ways that this can practically happen. So you can be overly optimistic with your revenue forecasting. So you can really think, we just need that one last position or one last car or whatever you think, and I'm going to push revenues a little bit further than I would maybe be comfortable with. Then they don't materialize. Then that puts you in a position where you might be required to utilize fund balance. You can also, even with realistic forecast, potentially get into trouble based on lower than anticipated revenue collection. So this would primarily be going back to the recession example, where you think you have realistic forecasts, but then the climate changes, things change, and the revenues don't materialize as you anticipated. But I would point out that the town does not have a history of this happening. So we have used it in a more practical sense, more commonly as unplanned things happen during the year. Staff comes to council and recommends that we utilize fund balance to cover the cost. So that happens on a fairly frequent basis. And in addition, you can use it as a budgeting tool to cover one-time items within the budget. And this can happen as well, where the budget team thinks we really need this item. It's one-time in nature, so we can utilize fund balance because we don't have sufficient revenues otherwise. So sticking with the budget, it can be used as a revenue source. So it can be used to balance the budget. If you, as I mentioned, have some one-time items that you believe are critical, you can use this as a revenue source. But really the critical piece there is it does have to be one time. So after you use fund balance, it can obviously be replenished, but those funds are gone. Similar to if you purchase a large one-time item at home, the funding you use to do that is going to no longer exist. So that's why it's really important to try to focus on purchasing one-time items. So buying a piece of equipment, ultimately a piece of equipment will need to be replaced, but the life cycle is sufficient that it makes sense to go ahead and do that. Where paying staff salaries, which is going to be a recurring cost on an annual basis, doesn't make sense because you're going to deplete the fund balance when you're using it over and over and over again for the expense that you know is going to be there. For those types of costs, it makes more sense to use other revenues that are more sustaining and are going to be there. So this slide reviews FY18, FY19 fund balance usage, so what we utilized last year. So in the adopted budget, we had $897,000 utilized or budgeted for. And over the course of the year, we increased that by approximately $2.5 million. So that's the revised budget of almost $4 million. And you can see the different items listed there. So there are a lot of different strategic investments, the Jurgen purchase, Amazon match, the Town Hall underground power, the Parks Master Plan. So a lot of items that had significant importance that were utilized. What I would point out is that I think this was more than we would normally spend. There are a lot of different opportunities that came up during the year, so I think this would potentially be a year where we're utilizing a bit more than we would historically. So I'd just point that out. As we get into this next slide, it shows the change in fund balance over the course of time. So you can see the yellow lines, that is unassigned fund balance, and then the blue is the committed fund balance. So a couple examples. The unassigned, as I mentioned, is where it's up to council's discretion to utilize it how they see fit. Committed is items such as the revenue savings plan, water sewer capacity debt, where we're using to pay off debt, dental claims, development services, so those types of things that have a more dedicated, specific purpose. What else I would point out on the committed level, we did spend approximately $1.2 million on that. That was from the fee in lieu of parkland that we used to purchase the Jurgen property. So even with that, it did decrease, but not nearly as significantly as the amount of revenue or the amount of fund balance we utilized. I would also note that, as I mentioned, the revenue savings plan is included here. As of the end of FY19, there was $1.7 million in fund balance associated with the revenue savings plan. There's more committed in future years on the budgeting side, but that's the amount that has been moved into the revenue savings plan in terms of the CAFR. What I would also point on unassigned is we did decrease, but as I mentioned, we did have a number of significant critical and strategic one-time investments that were required to be made. So I would not anticipate that occurring as the same level in the future. Are there any comments or questions on this slide?
So the amount you mentioned, what, 1.7 million, the revenue savings plan, that's a cumulative amount?
Yes, sir. Over the course of time, there has been $1.7 million put into the revenue savings plan, but that's a little bit behind. So there's a couple of years of, we've committed additional funding and within the budget to that plan. It just hasn't gotten into the fund balance yet, but it will.
Thinking there's more than three, excuse me. I was thinking there's more than $3 million in it.
What you have to remember about the revenue savings plan is that it is a few years behind. So the amount you're seeing there, so as for this year's audit, we were basically putting in the FY 17-18 funding. So it is a year behind in terms of when we actually put the funding in. So we are, when you think about the amount we've committed for FY 18-19 and then FY 19 and 20, that's when you get to those higher totals. But because it's a year behind, it's a little bit lower than perhaps you were thinking.
Okay, no action.
Do you know how much is in the budget for this year that'll go towards the revenue savings plan?
This year, we have 1.44 million dedicated or set aside. Obviously, there'll be the true up at the end of the year, but that's the budgeted amount. And then within the FY 18-19 budget, we have $1.14 million put in or dedicated to the revenue savings plan. And that true up would then occur at the end of FY 20, and we'd put those funds away within the fund balance. And finally, just talking about FY 19-20, we did include some funding for unassigned fund balance in the adopted budget. We also have included some different items in the revised budget. You can see here a couple things to point out. We do have the to be determined here for the space needs assessment, so that will be an additional cost coming up, but there's the commitment there. And then there are some additional items that staff felt like we needed to discuss as part of this that are potentially coming up. So that's approximately $21,000 for Jurgen land property taxes and approximately $85,000 for FY 2019 bond interest. So there are some different items coming up, but as you can see, even with those different items, we are significantly lower than we were in the past.
Tell us a little more about, this is the first time I've seen where bond interest payment pops up because they're already programmed, we know what they are in advance. So what's different about this one, Mike?
We did not include this one in the budget. I think in the past we were able to delay it until after the next year, but I think we took a different approach there. I want to put you on the spot, do you know?
Yeah, I can't really speak to the budget development process since I wasn't here, but it looked like the same process was followed in FY 19-20 that it was in FY 18-19. That instead of, because like you said, the interest payments, they aren't known at the time the budget's developed because we don't know what the bonds are going to sell for. So instead of plugging in a number, they just didn't budget the interest to come back later and do that. When you know an exact number, just come back later in the fiscal year and do that with the budget amendment.
Okay.
And the only other thing I would note here is we do have two payments on the Lakeside Drive and the Tree Street, I can't say that. Those items had been in PAL bill funding. There was an error made as part of the budget development process last year. We overestimated the amount of PAL bill fund balance we would have at the end of the year. So we've had to divert those two projects from PAL bill fund balance, which we were originally planning on using them for when we came to council, and move those to unassigned fund balance. Also, as part of that, based on the various options staff considered, we are going to plan on or recommended that we defer a vehicle purchase, and that will allow us to true up the PAL bill budget. Unfortunately, we would still have a depleted fund balance, but that would allow us to get back into the right position in terms of being in the black in terms of their fund balance. And that was just overspending in FY 19-20, not based on anything staff did. It was just based on the over projection or staff's projection in terms of how much we thought we were going to spend. With that, I'll take any questions.
I think it's reasonable to note that we have paid our last installment on the UDO. That was that $150,000?
Over the course of time, I believe that was $200,000. I believe it was 50, then 100, then 50 again.
Oh, okay. So
but we have paid the last installment as well.
So that's taken care of. Thank you.
Well, it's been budgeted then, but we haven't.
We have not done it, but it's set aside in reserve, so we will not have to, barring, I guess, a cost going over the amount we've budgeted, we have at least set aside a significant portion of the cost.
Also important to note on here, a couple of these items were items not of our own doing. The $155,000 to improve Frederick Road was supposed to be the responsibility of the Wake County school system. However, they got the legislature to change. And local improvements are required that get the reimbursements. That's $155,000. And then the $120,000 to cover the costs associated with the election was more than twice of what we normally budget, if I recall. We normally budget $45,000. And so because of the requirements by the legislature, again, those costs increased.
John wanted to clarify something. I believe that the last installment, the last $50,000 installment for the UDO, I believe we did not put in the current year's budget because we knew it was a multi-year project and would not be needed for this year. So I believe that we will still need to, in a future action, appropriate the last 50 that makes the 200,000. You are going to have a draft of the contract for the UDO at your work session next week, and we will clarify those numbers next week to make sure that that's the actual situation.
So we haven't contributed then the full 200?
I don't believe so. That's what I think that we did 50 the one year, we did 100 the next, and for this year's budget, because we knew we would not expend it all within the year, we did defer including the last 50 of the 200 in this year's budget. Because we knew we wouldn't be able to use it all within the 1920 budget.
We can clarify that. I apologize.
So just to make the point, it's not the final installment at this point. Okay.
Okay, this is just for your information only. No action is needed. Number 5, personnel policy.
Is that
3 actually.
questions for that? Okay. All right, I'll present from the podium. All right, Mayor, Town Council, I'm going to give you an overview of the personnel policy manual update. We covered this a few months ago and gave you an opportunity to look over it. We want to bring it back and try to get some closure to it, but I'll go through and kind of outline the process and where we stand right now. So the personnel policy manual, it's made up of several items. And we basically combined them all into one policy manual. A lot of it is legally required items that, basically we have no control over. It's either, a federal law, state law, something like that. And then there's items that, the council approved through the budget process. Some of those things become part of the personnel policy. And I'll give you some examples of these. And then a large part of what's in there covers day-to-day operations. Just different items. For example, some of the legally required items have to do with the Fair Labor Standards Act. When it talks about, FMLA or something like that, those are outlined by federal laws. We don't have a whole lot of leeway in how that's administered. We have a sexual harassment policy, and a lot of those are pretty standard in how they're handled, and workers' comp. Civil leave and some of those things. So I'm not going to go through the whole list, but there's a number of things that are mandated by federal policy that become part of our personnel policy that we don't have a whole lot of leeway in how we administer it or how we craft our own town policy. And if there's any questions, I can pause and answer any questions. Then the next type of items that are in there are things that council, in essence, you approved it when you approved the budget, like our pay and class levels, the classifications for all of our job titles, the pay plan, the ranges, those type of things. And also the position classification plan as far as what classification it's in, or pay grade it's in. Those type of things are approved as part of the budget. Health insurance, what we offer for employees for health insurance. Once the budget is approved, that takes care of that. And then the holiday item, we follow the state holiday schedule. So in essence, once the state approves theirs, that in essence approves what we do here as a town. Every once in a while, it might be something different. For example, one thing we did different this year is July the 3rd is on a Friday. So instead of making that a holiday, because we know every employee just about is going to be working that day, the state counts that as their holiday, but we're going to have it Monday the 6th as our holiday. So that's a change, but for the most part, we try to follow the state. So those things are approved. When you approve how many days each employee gets off for holidays, that's included as part of the personnel policy for that. A lot of other things in there are day-to-day operations. It talks about disciplinary action, should we have to take any, the steps for that, grievance procedures, any appeals process that we may have, how we do background checks for final candidates, and things even as small as, the dress code, what's kind of the minimum dress code for the organization. And then another thing that's in there that for day-to-day that we've really had to amend a little bit over the years is inclement weather, how we handle that, because it just seems like we're having more and more snow days and those type of things during the winter. So that's primarily when we use the inclement weather policy. And it talks about things about who has to work. We have some what we call, emergency personnel in public works, police, that have to work, and then it talks about how we handle their time, and if others are off, how that time is handled also. Attendance, we have an on-call policy, a callback policy, and that again is for usually when you have an emergency. If you call an employee back in, in some departments they take turns being on call, and it talks about when you're supposed to respond, how you're supposed to respond, how you get paid, and those type of things. So some of that is just, day-to-day operations that any town would have in its operations policy or personnel policy. So, this policy hasn't been updated in a while, so there were some practices and things that we needed to update to make it clear and consistent and reflect what we were currently doing and to meet the legal requirements. It was formatted and put in a layout that was searchable and hopefully will make it easier to find items and put like items together. And then we want to also make sure we have a policy for how often we review this. So we put in something that requires it to be reviewed at least, I think, every couple of years on an ongoing basis, and just to keep it up to date. One place you saw this is like when we were talking about the holiday pay, we had to go back and what the action you took on holiday pay for police, we went back and had to put that in the personnel policy so the policy would match the practice. So that's one example where we did that. This was a cross-functional team that put the personnel policy update together. We had representatives from pretty much every department. Each representative went back to their department and they updated the policies on their own. They brought the policies to the meeting, and if they needed some input or feedback, they got that from the committee members. So no, HR did not, update everybody's policy. For example, finance policies are going to be what the finance department feels like they need to be for their auditing purposes or for just basic financial procedures. Police has some policies, and then Public Works has policies. A lot of their policies that were brought here might have to do, like I said, the on-call policy and some of the things that they have there, how you report the work. And so just different items. There's also some IT policies about how we use our equipment, how equipment is checked out, making sure we take security measures, enact security measures to protect our system. So just the whole plethora of just different policies, and what we try to do is just put them together and combine them into one format.
Rodney, I have a question.
Yes.
About the team members including on this committee. You said it was pretty much from every department,
Yeah.
but where does inspections come in this group? Where does IT come in? Where does admin come in?
Well, we didn't put one from everyone because it could get too big. A lot of times, IT doesn't have specific policies not IT, inspections doesn't have specific policies that relate to the town wide for their group in particular that they need to put in here. They would come under more of the general policies, human resources, but a lot of these other groups had policies that were maybe more specific to their work group and their work title, but they did get a chance to review it before it was. Did you have something?
I was just going to make the comment, Ms. Behringer, that Morgan King, who no longer is with the organization, was the representative for developmental services, and she, supported inspections, engineering, and planning as part of this committee.
Yeah, I missed her name when I was looking at that. But yes, so, but typically, she pretty much brought the items back to those departments.
One other question.
But they probably didn't have a lot of dedicated things in here.
Were you or Matt or John involved in this review committee or not?
We were not involved in the review committee, but we reviewed every draft that came out. Well, once they got a draft copy, we reviewed the entire policy manual. And we sat down and met, the whole management team and HR sat down and met, and we went through it. And he gave us ample time all to go through it on our own. We marked it up, and then we got together as a group and talked about the different changes or if we had questions and those type of things.
One last question for this one. How long has it been since the last policy manual update?
We did a minor policy update in August of 2016. It just changed some very minor things. Prior to that, it was about 5 or 6 years before that the policy manual had been looked at in totality. This, Ms. Behringer, was the schedule of how everything laid out. And as Mr. Dickerson talked about, the September 2018 to November 2018 was the manager's office review, and then their edits and updates were incorporated between January and March of this year.
And it took us several meetings to get through it, as you can imagine, so we did go through. And then, of course, we brought it to council for your review in June. Well, let me back up. Even after the management team and HR looked at it, and we made edits or had questions or whatever, I took it to a department head meeting for comment and gave the department heads the opportunity to look through it and provide comment also. So it wasn't just a rush process.
So all department heads saw it or got a chance to review it before it was actually published?
Yes, before it was presented to council. Yeah, before it was presented to council. Yeah, it was still in the draft form when all the department heads got it. We actually did a presentation similar to this at a department head meeting.
Without jumping ahead, maybe I'm not, but as a matter of policy, particularly for new employees, are they given a printed version of this, or is it strictly a reference to a online access?
Used to get a printed version. I don't think we do printed versions anymore.
They do. They actually,
pretty thick.
yeah, they get a printed copy during their deploy session,
Okay.
which is on their first day. And then they're also told that from that point forward, where to find it on the intranet, and any updates beyond that first printed copy would be placed on the intranet.
And at one point, we had them sign to say they received it, and they
still
still
do.
do
Yep.
that,
And
so.
we'll still do that going forward.
I think giving a printed copy is a good policy to have. Some people may not refer to it very much, but I think I like that idea.
I'm usually not involved in that process, so I misspoke there. But, and it's been a while since I received one as an employee, so. So anyway, you know, a lot of steps were taken before it came to you, several months of work. And the departments got to review it ongoing as their representatives were on the committee. So they did get to see bits and pieces of it ongoing, and as well as the entire manual.
I do have one other question, Rodney. This may be getting into the weeds a little bit, but if during that departmental review process, a department head had a suggested change, how was it determined whether the change went into the policy or not? Is that,
It depends on what it was, but I had the final say in what changed, depending on what it was. You have a particular example?
yeah,
Okay.
I'm just curious.
But yeah, I had the final say. Like I said, we reviewed it as a management team, but as the head official, I had the final say in the format, and the content of what you were presented. And like I said, a lot of it was not discretionary, so. So one of the big things about this is Mr. Seckler was stating, it's been a while since it had an overall review, and it is a cumbersome process. And, you know, one thing we could do, like we've done in the past, we did bring some of those to you. And like what we did this time is we combined the personnel policy manual with some of our day-to-day practices. So that made it an even larger document versus what we had in the past. But we wanted to have kind of a one-stop place for all the policies and procedures. So with that, from time to time, we're going to need to update this. And the recommendation is to shift the update responsibility from the town council to the manager, so that as we update every, you know, if we want to change an and to a but, or if a OSHA regulation changes and we need to make it consistent with a new OSHA regulation or any other federal policy, that we don't have to bring it back to you every time something changes. It would be up to me and my responsibility to bring any relevant changes that I think the council would want to know and or approve at my discretion. So that will definitely put a lot of pressure on me. But we feel like unless you want to look at this every other meeting, every time, you know, we have to tweak something, we did not want to have to bring it back to you, you know, too often. So that's why you see that recommendation. Sometimes you'll find typos, potentially, regulations change. We might rethink something we put in here and tweak it a little bit. So we're just trying to take some of the burden off of you. As you can see, it's a daunting task to get through this entire document. And we were trying to take the brunt of that and bring back the more relevant pieces to you. I know that's a paradigm shift in the philosophy we've had in the past, but we think it would be a much smoother process. And so to ensure that, we will periodically do you know, review of all the HR policies, and just to make sure they're accurate and legal and reflect our practice. The new format, we think, will make it easier to find items as we group them together and put it into a numbering system, and then prescribe, like I said, the timeline for review.
Do other municipalities operate the way you just suggested, that the town manager handles the policy, or?
There are some, and we did do a poll. I can't answer, I don't remember exactly which ones in particular, but we did a poll, and a lot of them do give that authority to the town manager, so it doesn't have to go to council every time they change something. Because this would,
Is there a
If you,
method,
if you do,
is there a method of showing the changes to us as you do them, in like an addendum sheet or?
yeah. I mean, I can always, if we change something, we could always just hand it to you as a report at a meeting, you know, whenever it's changed or once a month or whatever. And we definitely keep you informed. It's just a matter of, because if you approve this document, it's going to be like approving the ordinance. So every time you change something in the ordinance, it's got to come back to you and it's got to be presented and you got to vote. So we can certainly, you know, give you a report anytime we change or tweak anything. And I'd also like to say this is basically a policy on procedure and those type of things. It's gonna change. There's gonna be edits, you know, as we use things day to day and as things come up, we're gonna have to make edits and tweaks to it. So it's just a matter of how you want us to handle that.
I don't mind stating that I have every confidence in the town manager's ability to take on that responsibility and to inform council if and when the policy changes are significant enough that he believes we ought to be informed of that.
And just to give you some idea of some of the changes that were made, we put a color-coded system here so you can kind of see. The green just shows items that were, the same content was moved to a different section or a different policy where it fit better. Yellow is we updated the policy to match our current agreed-upon practice. And then red was a recommended change to the policy, pretty much a wholesale change or something significant. So you would definitely be interested if we change something, you know, a red item for the most part, but just kind of changing the format a little bit is really not that big a deal, just making it more readable. And give you some examples. The green, we consolidated definitions. We had definitions throughout the whole policy manual, and we just wanted to have kind of like a glossary at the beginning. And so we put the definitions all in one spot. We also reordered it to emphasize ethical conduct. So a lot of the things that deal with ethics and how you should carry yourself as an employee and those type of things were put more up front. And, okay, another example was the driving language. That was, we have a policy on driving. If driving's a part of your job, core part of your job, there's a policy in there about what happens if you get a ticket. You're supposed to notify your employer, your supervisor, what type of things could cause you to lose your town driving privileges, such as a DWI, or those type of things. And it talks about, we also have things in there about, you know, use of equipment while driving, you know, use of cell phone while driving, those type of things. So we put that all in a separate policy in the back versus having it intertwined inside the personnel policy manual. So some things stand alone. Another example of some of the standalone things is the OSHA workplace safety regulations. That's one whole big section. And it covers things like what safety equipment do you wear when you're welding? Somebody at the shop's welding, what type of safety equipment do they wear? When should employees wear earplugs, you know, when the ambient sounds 85 decibels or higher, you know. That's all regulated by federal OSHA standards, so we just adopt whatever standard they set. Some of the yellow, we clarified HR involvement and responsibility for recruiting, so we just want to make sure HR is involved in the recruiting process so that we're following proper rules and regulations as far as what type of questions are asked. There's certain paperwork that has to be signed when someone gets interviewed. They have to sign a release so we can do background checks, so we can do substance abuse testing, those type of things. So we just defined that. Another thing we did is remove the reference to business licenses because the state, over the last 2-3 years, disallow business licenses by municipalities or all local governments. So we had to take that reference out of our policy manual. And I think there was a reference to that in the finance department policy. And then we clarified the process for non-disciplinary suspension. And that talks about if someone's being investigated, but it hadn't been proven, there's times where you might suspend the employee while the investigation is going on. So that technically is not part of the discipline because they haven't been proven guilty yet, but we needed to define that that was something that could be done when necessary. And you see that a lot of times in law enforcement. You know, if they're investigating, they might send the law enforcement officer home or suspend them until the results of investigation are done. So we just needed to clarify that. And then read the policy approval, like I just went over that and how it's reviewed. And then another example was the ability for me to grant exception to the nepotism policy, because the original policy was put in place to keep, well, it was kind of broad that said that related individuals couldn't work in the same department, and then it got changed to they could not supervise each other. So we needed to clarify it that two related individuals could work in the same department if there wasn't a possibility for the one or the other to supervise the other one. So that was a change. It's a little bit of a change. It still met the intent, but it allowed some flexibility. And then the restriction for probationary employees to use vacation, that's something we brought to you as a benefit enhancement over a year ago. Our current policy said that if you were on probation, for example, a new employee here is typically on probation for 6 months, a year if you're a police officer. And there was a policy that said they could not use vacation. But more and more, when we hire employees, they might have had a wedding scheduled or a vacation schedule. So that's sometimes part of the negotiation when we hire them, to allow them to be able to get off for those things. Because we're not gonna say, no, you can't go to your brother's wedding or whatever. So we removed that restriction and made it more at the discretion of the supervisor. But before, it was a all-out restriction on using vacation your first 6 months. And so that's pretty much an overview. Mr. Seckler's here, some of the department heads. If you have questions about any particular section or any of the other things that were covered, we're happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay.
So this would, if anybody wants to review it in detail, it would be under the HR heading of the town's website and
It is
personnel
posted on the intranet on the town's website under the HR tab, and we'll send it out. Once it's approved, we'll also send it out to all employees so they'll know and have further notice that it had been changed and updated and those type of things, which most should know anyway already. But we want to make sure everybody knows the final copy is on the website.
Okay, we need a motion on this.
Are you looking for a motion for us to approve the
Well, what I'm
process,
looking
or-
for is, first, whether you're okay with just having me approve it and then bring changes back to you as needed. So that would be the first option. If not, then the council will have to approve it in the form of a motion and a vote. And then every time we make a change, we'll bring it back and you'll have to approve it in the form of a motion and vote, no matter what the change is, because it would be treated like a ordinance.
Curiosity's got me. What you think is the most controversial change that was made in it?
The most controversial,
Had to do with money.
oh, the town manager approval, of course, that one. But then we also have a policy in here about tattoos above the neck being covered. That's a new one. We really didn't, a few years ago, we may not have had.
You mentioned the holiday pay issue that was addressed with the police a few months back or a year ago.
Yeah.
And how does that apply to the rest of the employees?
That does not apply to the rest of the employees. Police is on a whole different work schedule, but the previous policy said that holiday pay shall be paid out. And we went through a lot of that whole discussion a couple of years ago. So we, after the council approved the use of holiday bank for police officers, a whole nother policy was drafted up consistent with that practice and was put in this policy. Before, it said holiday bank shall be paid out. But we went through all of that and got it altered, and this policy is consistent with what you approved in that final discussion.
Apply to other employees?
Holiday bank? It does not.
I was thinking that during your presentation, you mentioned that you got it consistent, what was with the police, what had been adopted for police was made consistent for other employees. I just got the wrong impression.
No, not for holiday bank.
Well,
Maybe the
I was
holiday
just hearing
schedule.
the policy applied to police. I thought you just mentioned that it was applied. You brought over things that were applicable and made them apply to other employees. I just got the wrong impression about what you said.
Let me take a shot at that. So when we brought the holiday bank policy to you, our practice and our policy did not match. What Mr. Dickerson said as a result of this is we've modified the language to ensure that what we're currently doing, what you approved as a council with regards to the holiday bank for police, is now consistent in policy. But holiday bank only applies to the police department. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm looking at if you're ready for a motion, Mr. Mayor, I'm looking at the face sheet, which simply states there that the recommended motion is to authorize town manager to implement recommended changes. Will that cover what you need? I mean,
Yes.
I'm happy to move that.
Yes, that'll cover it.
Before motion.
I move, Mr. Mayor, that we authorize town manager to implement the recommended changes in the personnel policy.
Motion made, second for discussion. All in favor, vote by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate that. We will.
Committee reports, have any? Rodney, you got a manager report?
Yes. You have some standard reports in your agenda packet, a lot to do with the Garner info and some of the actions there. Then you also have a financial report, your monthly financial report that talks about where we are as far as budget for this first quarter. The more relevant part of that is we're pretty much 3 months into the budget, which is 25% of the budget year. And we've collected about 11.3% of the estimated revenues. Just keep in mind that most of the property tax revenue is collected in November, December, and January. And sales tax, of course, is collected quarterly. So no concern there. Revenues will catch up. And then the overall report shows that the town expended approximately 23.5% of its budget. And let's see if I had any others. I think for the most part, let's see. Okay, the other thing is we have a capital project status update. We do that every quarter. And was that handed out?
Oh, it's in the agenda package.
It's in the agenda, okay, all right, I just didn't turn to it, it's in the it's in the back. Yeah, it's in the back, on the back page, and it's just the update on the projects. And then wanted to remind you of the early start at the October 29th work session to discuss the capital improvement plan.
What early
Is it-
start?
Is that the right, that's not the right date, yeah, that's not the right date, it's the November work session. Yeah. Yeah, as soon as I saw that, I was like, ooh, that's not right.
What date is that?
November? 27th, okay.
And that's an early start. What time is that going to be starting?
The plan is to start at about 3,
November 27th, November 26th, you mean?
26. Well, let me pull it up. I have it on my calendar here. I didn't catch that one.
Let's just have them on the 28th and we'll eat turkey here.
Yeah, the 26th start at 3
Football on the big screen.
and go through the CIP, and that would be to talk about the items on the CIP with the council, the sitting council, as well as the newly elected council. So there'll be some transition with the items and some discussion about, how they were, how they made the list, and then, there might be some discussions about, are there any items that might need to be added to the list? And then, of course, a lot of these items will, become part of our future bond referendum, so we just wanted to get a good handle on making sure everybody was on the same page as far as what items were on the CIP, and then we can look from that to, start developing our bond program and getting cost estimates, updating costs, and those type of things.
What time did you say, Rodney, it was going to start?
3 o'clock is the
3
plan.
o'clock, okay. That'll be here or in the training room or both, or, we know? It'll be at town hall, one way or the other.
Yeah, it'll be at town hall. We gotta look at the schedule and make sure, see which rooms are available, but
Gotcha.
more than likely we'll try to probably make it, well, I don't even wanna say, but we'll do that, and we'll break for a dinner, and then we'll go into the regular work session, but we'll let you know the location, whether it's in this room or in the training room. And that's all I have, I believe.
Mr. Attorney?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, we need a closed session pursuant to NCGS 143 -31811.
Start with Buck.
Yes, I was unable to attend the last meeting. My wife was sick. We had a report on some getting underway with the depot, a couple of large contract items for vendors for moving and maybe for some rehabilitation. Just a quick question, were those numbers that were presented, were they within what was in the original budget?
They were within the original budget and very favorable, so we were pleased with the quotes we got, the updated quotes we got, and those contracts have been signed, and Public Works is in the process of scheduling the contractors to start the work.
Okay. The other question had been about the retreat work session, and that's been answered, and I had several others that I sent along to Rodney, and they were answered in the course of the presentations tonight. That's all I have.
Right.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I've got a couple of questions for, I think, Mr. Johnson. I thank him for the updated information we have. I wanted this information for the public also, because of the suspension of some DOT projects. And reading this on the computer screen is challenging at times. That's being kind.
I understand.
One item, all the overlay, the resurfacing project by DOT, all are done. The Woodland Road project from Timber Drive to Van Dorn has not started. Is that going to start this year, or has that been delayed? Do we know?
I don't know the answer to it. I did talk with Joey Hopkins, a district division engineer, while we saw him at the Amazon tour yesterday, and he did mention that. So he's looking into that, but I don't have a timetable for you.
Okay, because all the ones that were scheduled for 2019 are either complete or one's 90% complete, and that's the only one that didn't have any percentage where it had started. So that's why I was actually, I know that's what Ms. Behringer's asked about over the last couple of years.
And I talked to Mr. Hopkins on Tuesday as well, and he looked at it on his phone. He said that he would flag it again. He didn't have a direct answer then, but he heard what we said.
Okay. In regards to some other DOT projects, the one for the John Sausage Road, the portion in front of Amazon is stated on here because the town has participation of $600,000 on that. question about the 401 widening, which is broken up in segments in here. It's interesting, it says from Simpkins to Mechanical, which has been suspended, but two of the sections in between are not. It says, US 401 widening south of Old Stage to south of Mechanical. It says it's on schedule and will be complete by 2022. And 401 widening from 1010 Road to Wake Community College would begin sometime next year and be ended in about a year. The Highway 50 replacement for everyone out there has been delayed a year. It won't start until 2021. That's when the contract will let, correct?
That's more than a year delay, actually, from the original. About 3 years ago, we were told it would be, I believe, spring of 2019, then it got moved to fall, then 2020, now it's 2021.
Well, about 6 years ago, they were going to replace the bridge over Malters Creek on New Bethel Church Road, and it says on here it's going to be done. It says on here the summer of 2020. So I'm assuming that's the latest update. But that was supposed to be done.
I mean, and as you may be aware, that a lot of this has to do with what they're considering to be a temporary cash flow issue with
Yes.
respect to their budgets right now. So
Yes.
we're hoping that that may come back, but that is the best information we have at this time.
Okay, the Timber Drive, the free flow or the continuous flow, which was supposed to start in a couple of years, has now been pushed off to the right-of-way, is in 23, and the construction of the continuous flow at that intersection won't be until 24, so that's 5 years away. That's been delayed. It appears that the Rayner Road Bridge been pushed back 1 year. They would do the one on New Bethel first, and then the Rayner Road one would be done in 2021. My biggest, the US 401 widening, the intersection at 1010 and 401 has been pushed back to 2029, unfortunately. The one that is the most, I just wish hope you can explain it to me. The grade separation at Vandor Springs Road and Garner Road with the railroad, where it says they want to construct a grade separation and close the crossing. Can you please enlighten me how we're going to do a grade separation in that crammed little area? Because we just built a new subdivision and we have businesses on the other side. I just want to see how the grade separation is going to work there. I just am fascinated by that one.
Yeah, I'd have to take a closer look at that project. I've not been involved in that one.
I have a catapult and we're going to toss you across.
Because it says they're going to close the crossing, is what it says. I just want to know how we're going to.
Yeah, a lot of these, the descriptions if I've got it correctly, I'm pulling these off of the TIP.
Yes.
So.
Okay. So the big suspension ones that affect us are the Timber Drive and 70 has been delayed basically 5 years. The Highway 50 bridge is over a year. It does say they're going to do the New Bethel Church Road Bridge. 540 is on schedule, except for the section from 40 to 64. That has been delayed until 2029. I don't think it surprised anyone in here. But according to this, they're going to do parts of the 401 widening from 4-lane to 6-lane. It'll be done from 1010 to Wake Community College, according to this, and be finished a year from now. And also from south of Old Stage Road to south of Mechanical. Now, that's just by 2022. So we were told that there would be a super street on 401 from Legend Road to roughly south of Old Stage, correct? Oh, not south of Old Stage, to
Enron or?
So there's two projects, and it's very confusing. There are two
Yes.
projects from Mechanical Boulevard south on 401 that overlap one another. And the one that is moving forward that council's already committed dollars for sidewalks for is from Anaron Court, Biscuitville, to just south of Old Stage Road. That one's moving ahead. There was a very slight delay, but nothing substantial. Council has authorized, we've already done the agreements to put sidewalks on that stretch. There's another project that goes slightly north of that to Mechanical and much further south, and it's just the unique way in which DOT describes and designs these projects. That one is the one that is going to be delayed a bit in your update.
Okay, but the section from Anaron to south, just south of Old Stage, will be from 4-lane to 6-lane to Super Street, right?
Yes, sir.
All the crossovers, make the intersection of Old Stage, we saw it, the Old Stage and 401 intersection will be quite a bit different than it is now.
Yes, sir, and the new term that's being used is synchronized street, so I bring that up only in case you
Synchronized
hear
street. Thank you.
the term synchronized street instead of super street. That is the current day term for that. We are still working at staff level. DOT is still talking to us about some subtle changes to the plans to accommodate U-turns or not accommodate U-turns, but that is progressing ahead.
Okay, also because of some issues with pedestrian deaths over the last 3 or 4 years, and I'm sure Chief Zuderman can tell us it's been 3 or 4, that we were supposed to be some, not only sidewalks, but crosswalk. And we were talking at the, going blank here, the street there, going into the Super Walmart by Red Star Oil Company.
Person.
Thank you.
Purser and Pine Winds.
Yes, that was where that was one consideration, or one, it was talked about, because I think that's where 1 or 2 of the deaths took place, and then maybe on up 401 also.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's all part of this plan?
Yes, it
That
is.
we've seen presentation, but it's been quite some time.
Yes.
Okay. All right, just want to let the public know that there are some projects being done, and also in this, we talked about some projects very nicely done. A couple of those, of course, have been delayed. Also mentions the town-led projects, which is on here also. The roundabout at White Oak, Hebron Church Road and Ackerman is moving forward. It says here that, I think we're supposed to start construction on that sometime next year. Isn't that correct, Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
That's the plan?
I think the current projection is spring of 2021. We're hoping that we can beat that, but this is a federal project, so it's got a lot of touch points with NCDOT that we have to go through, which takes the process a little bit longer than if it was fully town funded.
Okay, and also tied into that are the sidewalks, the sidewalk project on Timber Drive from Blanton down to Stowe Place, and then from Hearth Drive to 50. That hopefully that sidewalk will be completed sometime by the end of next year, correct?
That's correct. Spring Drive has already been awarded, and Timber Drive has been awarded, or it's getting ready to advertise, excuse me. We're in the final stages of approvals. We've got the plans finished. Right-of-way has been certified. We've gotten construction authorization. We're working on the bid docs and an RFQ for construction administration.
That's the Timber Drive sidewalk?
Yes.
Okay. We have the Spring Drive's been awarded, and then you're still working on the Van Dorn,
Yes.
Springs Road from Timber down to Tiffany Circle.
Correct.
That's still, hopefully that contract will be let sometime next year, we hope. Okay. And then, of course, the new Rand Road also has already been moving forward with that.
Yes, that one has also been awarded, and we're also getting geared up for pre-con, and we're just working it with, as mentioned earlier, with some of the utility easements and getting Duke Energy started on their pole relocations.
So sometime, we hope sometime next year, that up to 4 sidewalk projects will be starting. Okay. All right, I appreciate your help in explaining that, and I appreciate these reports, even though they're challenging to read at times in here, but that's really good information, as we've told you before. We appreciate it.
Sure.
Also, I want to mention, I think, Mr. Kennedy, that we have a Public Works Committee meeting next Tuesday morning. Is that correct? Isn't that correct?
8:30.
8:30? I think it's
Full
4 or 5
agenda.
items on the agenda.
Yes, and the agenda packet will come out to the committee members by the end of the week, tomorrow.
Okay, you say the end of the week tomorrow? This is a Thursday night.
It's just Thursday night. Yes, it'll be tomorrow.
Gonna throw us
So we
off.
have some weekend reading.
Yes, that's all I have for now, Mr. Mayor, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to call attention again to the fine work that Mr. Stallings did in setting up the tour of the Amazon. I believe it's called the Fulfillment Center now. I understand this event sort of evolved over the last 12 hours or so into something a little more significant than initially was planned for, but he pulled it off well. It was a good day for Garner. We received good recognition, and I think all the folks who took that tour were certainly impressed, not only with the facility itself, but to learn more about some of the programs that Amazon will implement, particularly some of their training programs for employees, and I'm sure you can read about that. But Joe, you did a good job with that, and thank you very much. I have the business cards of a Joe Nolan and a William Calcert, I guess, or Cosert. I did an email with them thanking them for the fine job they did, and they said they felt very welcomed by the town of Garner, and were pleased to be a part of us. So thank you, Joe. Also, I'd like to recognize a gentleman to my right out here, Mr. Rick Mercer. We all know that he leads our, I call it our communications department, communications director. He does a good job on that. What you may not know is that he is a local actor in The Little Mermaid that I had the privilege of going, my wife and I, and seeing last week. And not only is Rick in the production, but I believe his entire family is. And so if you want to go out and see him play several roles, but the role of the French chef, I think you'll be pleased to see that. So that'll be going on again this Friday, Saturday. Is that right, Rick? Yes. Okay. So well done, and talents didn't know was there, Rick. So good for you. I mean, I don't mean to imply that you did. I mean, that was good. I'll leave it at that. Okay. Yep. There you go. Also, I think everybody's getting a notice, but in recognition of the good service that our police chief has done and the change in his status, we congratulate him on the one hand, and hate to see him go, but I think there'll be a special event recognizing him on the 30th. Am I right on that, Chief?
That's
okay.
right.
So reminder on that. And one little traffic-related item, I'm wondering if anybody can tell me if the stoplight at the intersection of Timber Drive and Avisboro Road can ever be calibrated to decrease the amount of waiting time that Avisboro traffic has to wait there. I understand in the morning, Timber, is a busy road with a lot of traffic going by there, but you can go there at other times of the day when there's not so much traffic coming through on Timber, and it seems like the light is still a long time before you can actually progress on across. So I've had several people to mention that to me, and I indicated that I would make some inquiry. I don't know if there's anybody here who can answer that. Maybe that's a Joey Hopkins question, but I think they recalibrated it one time, but it seems like it's going back to the normal lengthy.
Yeah, they are state roads, so they're maintained by the state, but we have contacts, so we can certainly reach out to them, see if they can take a look at the intersection and feel if there's improvements that can be made to the timing.
Okay, that would be greatly appreciated if
Can
they
I
can look at
interject
that.
one while Chris is there? The lights at Buffalo Road and 50, they've been hanging for a while. It's not under our control, so.
Same thing, we can look into it and see if DOT can take a look at it and make any adjustments.
But about the time you find out, that they'll probably have then already activated them, but they've been hanging there.
Yeah, they're not activated. They just installed them. I don't know
Oh,
what the
okay.
timetable is for getting those
I got you.
activated. Yeah.
Yeah, we can find that out as well. We've got, most of the signals around the town are all maintained by a small group of signal guys that work for this part of the county, so we'll reach out.
Thanks for anything you can do there. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Elma,
Excuse me? Okay.
Kathy.
Yes, sir. For Public Works, Forest Garner Road needs a little bit of attention. There's some plastic gloves laying on the sidewalk in the street and trash and so forth. It's just normal routine stuff, but we could use some help there. Okay. And Chris, our favorite topic, the ease-offs on Penny Street and probably other streets as well. The grading contract, not the grading contractor, the asphalt contractor has still not taken care of those ease-offs into driveways.
Yes, we did get a quote today, so we're
Wonderful.
trying to get that finalized to get them out there and done.
Wonderful, thank you, appreciate it. And I would like us as a council to send a letter to DOT acknowledging their delays on these schedules on improvements, and also our disappointment that so many have been pushed back so far when we were led to believe for so long that they were coming right along. Of course, I live closest to the 50 Bridge replacement project, but I know there were 3 different entities. I don't know if they were families, churches, or whatever, but were forced to move, houses torn down, and they're gone, and now they're not going to do anything with that improvement for a year and a half probably, and those folks probably could have benefited from being able to occupy those residences a little bit longer. So I know that we're probably not going to change DOT's mind, but I think we need to have it on record that we're not pleased with how this has worked. can I get some thoughts? Or will we do this or not? And if not, I'll write a letter.
Well, I mean, they talked yesterday about the report. They paid $900,000 for a report to tell them they didn't have enough money.
Well, hello.
If you saw that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, this is not just in Wake County, this is statewide. There are projects all over the place, and, you know, instead of sending us a $250 refund, they should have, or could have, used it for other pressing needs. That's the legislature's decision. But there is one or more proposals in front of for $650 million or $720 million or whatever to fund some of these projects. Now, of course, these projects run into billions of dollars, but that is some of the money they're talking about spending for some of these that are, I think, safety issues, quote unquote. But that's what they're considering.
I understand that. I've read the news as well, but I still think we need to be on record as saying that we're not happy. We have a tendency here in Garner to go with the flow, and the old saying about the squeaky wheel gets the grease has some application here.
Fine by me.
I'm
I'm in agreement with Councilwoman Behringer in reference to making our concerns be known and making them, putting them down in writing, because there are projects that are coming back online. They are coming back online slowly but surely, and there are those who are making their concerns known. Well, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say that there is some equipment out on the East Garner Park that needs repair, especially for the ones that are used by individuals and kids who have special needs. We need to look at those areas to make sure that the straps are safe. Some are missing straps, so we ask that Public Works or Parks and Rec look into that for us. And great job, Joe. I'm one of those old board members. It was a pleasure working with you. Great job, and it was a great team that we had. And look in the future. And I would say also the chamber did a great job with the forum. It was a well done, well put on, and out there, if they're listening, great job to the Chamber of Commerce and the job that they did. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
If I may ask, could we have a letter, a potential letter to DOT drafted by the work session or at the latest, the first meeting in November?
Want a letter.
Okay, you want staff to draft a letter and put council as a
Expressing our
signatory?
disappointment?
Okay, all right.
One other item, Mayor. Chris, can you tell us what DOT did to the Rohrball Bridge?
What they did recently? No, I'm not aware of what they did recently.
They fixed it.
They grouted it.
Did they finish it already? I wasn't aware.
I haven't,
They were
I
working.
rode over it.
They were working on it today. I
Okay.
spoke with Joey Hopkins about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and he said they were going to, I believe, put a concrete slab in and pump more concrete in. And his explanation to me was they hoped it worked. If it did not, they would pursue something until they did get it fixed completely.
No,
And it
they had
rides
started. I'm not
much
sure
more
if they
smoothly.
completed it to the.
I was not aware they had already started,
Yeah,
sorry.
They improved it.
Still wouldn't want to drive across it too fast, would you, Mr. Kennedy?
They improved it.
They appeared to be working on the westbound side today.
Yes.
Yeah, we need to go in closed session.
Mr. Mayor, before we finished here, I move that we go into closed session per the item that our attorney mentioned, and I'm sure he can give us the citation for that.
43-318-11A3.
What he said.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councilmember, we've been in closed session. Councilmember Singleton, tell us what went on.
Council discussed potential litigation, and at that closed session, we took no action. So, Mr. Mayor, I move that we adjourn.
Second, all in favor, vote.
Aye.